to order. So now we are being recorded, and make sure that it's best if you, once we get into the meat of the meeting, stay on mute and then make sure you wave and get my attention if you want to speak. And I think everybody's pretty familiar with etiquette on Zoom these days. So I did add an item to the agenda before approval, and that was, I was contacted by Andy Harvey, Captain A Shift, for Fire Station 5, but he has not joined us yet. So we'll just continue.
Oh, no.
On
Kathy, he's here. He just joined.
Oh, good. Oh, excellent. Oh, there you are. Hi, Andy.
Hi, thanks for letting me join on the last second here.
Welcome. Well, I've called the meeting to order, and we just need to approve the agenda, and then you'll be up next. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
I move. This is Kathleen. I move we approve the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Could I have a second? Okay, thanks, Steve. Does anybody have any exceptions?
Well, now I think we can have discussion, right? Right, Kathy? So we can amend the agenda to include Andy. So I'll move to approve the agenda with adding remarks from Andy Harvey from Fire Station 5.
Okay.
At the top.
Who seconded that?
John.
John, thank you, John. Is there any objection? If not, that motion is approved to add Andy to our agenda. So having done that, is anybody opposed to approval of the agenda as amended? Okay, great. The agenda is approved. Okay, well, Andy, you have the floor. So thank you so much for contacting me and wanting to speak to us this evening at our council meeting.
Oh, great. Well, you're very welcome. And again, thank you for letting me join in. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to just kind of take this opportunity to share some department news that you might be interested in. And then if you guys have any questions afterwards, I'd be happy to try to answer them if I'm able to. So I'm here at Station 5, which is the station that covers you guys' area. You know, we're located at basically the intersection of Spenard and McRae. And I'll try to get through this quickly and hopefully won't get interrupted by any calls while I'm doing it. And yeah, and then if there's questions, feel free to shout them out. The first thing I want to mention is we had a fire academy that started just the beginning of this week on Monday, and there are 10 recruits in that academy, and they'll be going through their basic initial training for the next couple months. They're due to graduate in late December, and then after they graduate, we'll turn right around again and hire another group of 20 in January, and that'll run for 2 to 3 months, and then they'll get released to come onto the line and start their 1-year probation after that. So we're kind of going through this sort of rapid fire process right now of hiring, and that's just to keep up with normal retirements, firefighters that are just sort of aging out and retiring, after their 20 or 25 or 30 years that they've been working. And then also it's an effort to cover those firefighters that are leaving earlier to take jobs in other departments and other states. So it's just a continuation of an ongoing effort that's been happening for a while, but it's sort of increased a little bit, I guess you could say, lately. So we're looking forward to those guys getting trained up and coming online, and other hiring efforts that are kind of going underway right now in the department involve 2 mobile crisis technician clinicians, and these 2 clinicians would join the ones that we already have on the department that take care of patients who are having mental issues, emotional issues, and normally these are patients that would in the past get transported to the hospital. even though they don't have, I guess, the classic, emergency medical type of issues that they're dealing with. So these technicians kind of take care of those patients and are a resource for them, to provide them help, and it alleviates some of our work that we would have had to do transporting them and taking rigs out of service to take care of them. And it also takes some of the workload off of the hospitals and emergency departments that those people would have traditionally gone to. So it's a very good service to the community and to these people, and it benefits other resources in our area, the hospitals, and then also the ambulances and fire engines that would have normally responded to these type of patients. So there's a big demand for it. The MCT program has grown rapidly, and so we're looking to hire 2 more people to help out with that program and turn it from a 12-hour a day service that it is right now into a 24-hour a day service. And in terms of statistics, just this year alone, there's been an increase of 44% of these MCT type of calls compared to 2022. And I would expect that number to continue to grow into the future, just from what I've seen, in my experience on the job. So we're looking to hire 2 more of them. We're also looking to hire a public information officer, which is a position in our department that's been vacant for a number of years. And that's an effort that's happening right now. I think we have 5 or 6 applicants for that position, and it should be filled soon. We have been working with 1 fire inspector for the entire city, and we recently hired a second one, and there's an effort to hire 2 more inspectors to augment that department and help out that 1 fire inspector that's been shouldering the entire load for the entire city, inspecting and investigating fire incidents when they happen. There's also a wildland mitigation office that is being kind of put together and stood up, and eventually, I don't know if it's going to happen this year or early next year, but there's going to be a program coordinator that's going to be hired to staff that program and kind of get it up and running. So that's kind of it, a snapshot of where we're at right now with our hiring efforts and how the department's progressing and growing in that regard. The other thing I wanted to mention is October is Fire Prevention Month. And traditionally, this is the month where we would kind of reach out and get into schools and talk to kids about fire safety. And there's also a lot of school groups that come through the fire station, and we give them tours, and it's a really good chance to reach out to the younger kids and talk to them about fire safety and how to stay safe with fire if they're in a house that has smoke in it or is on fire, how to get out safely and take care of themselves. And it's also a good opportunity to remind everybody that it's a good time of the year to check your batteries and your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors. Check them, hit that test button, make sure they're working right. And to just kind of put it in perspective about the importance of these things is that there were 5 fire fatalities as of March of this year. And in each one of those instances, there were not working smoke detectors in the residence. So, I can't say that if there was a working smoke detector that these people would still be alive today, but you can see a correlation between having that smoke detector there to alert you if there is a fire. It really increases your chances of surviving it. So it is really important. And if you know people that have small kids or have small kids of your own, take this opportunity to talk to them and talk to them about the importance of smoke detectors and going over exit drills in your home so that they know how to safely get out and know the best route to get out of their house if they have to in a hurry, especially if they're home by themselves or maybe it's late at night and their parents might be asleep. I think that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them, or if I don't have an answer, I can track one down and get it back to you guys. So again, I appreciate your time, and yeah, that's about all I have.
Okay, well, thank you, Andy. It looks like we have somebody with a question. Steve?
Yes. So Andy, the new program, I guess you said it's 12 hours now that it lasts, and you want 24 hours. That's a emergency mobile team, is that a mental health clinician and with uh, fire department? Or are they both folks work with AFD or?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a mental health. They work in teams of two. So one person is a mental health clinician, and the other person is a AFD paramedic. And they respond to calls that come in to the 911 system, and they get triaged by our dispatchers. And if the call meets a criteria for the mobile crisis team, then they get dispatched out to where that person's located. And it typically does not result in a transport to the hospital. So these two people would respond to the patient and talk to them and get them the appropriate resources that they need for whatever issue it is that they're having and that they're dealing with at that time. And if it turns out to be a medical issue, then an ambulance can get involved and a transport to the hospital can happen. But like I said, typically it results in a different outcome.
If there's an imminent risk of harm to self or others, do they do a commitment to the eye, or what happens then?
Well, it can work out that way. It has to meet certain criteria for that person to be, I guess, committed against their wishes, into a hospital kind of situation. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that could be Alaska Psychiatric Institute.
It's possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate the
Okay,
question.
Merle, I see you've got your hand raised. And Merle, if you want to unmute
Yes,
yourself.
I am. My
Okay,
hand
thank
is
you.
raised. Andy, my name is Merle Akers and I did live at 3031 Bennett Avenue. As you may remember, on the 17th of September, Monday, the 4:30 in the morning, my house was torched. And
Yeah,
so I don't know how it got on fire. It started on the outside. I've tried to find out from the inspector. Well, to my knowledge, there's no anyone investigating these fires these days. I've told there was a woman involved. I placed a call to her. I've never gotten a call back. But I'm curious as to know what started my fire, what started the fire, and means it burned us out. Can you help me out here, please?
I can certainly try to. I would like to know what started it as well. I was the officer that was first on scene for your fire, and I remember I spoke with you that night. We investigated the area that it looked like the fire started, and we couldn't find any obvious ignition sources. So if I was to speculate about what the cause of the fire was, it would be just that. It would be speculation, and that's not what we want to do. If we can't definitively find a cause of the fire, then it's ruled undetermined.
Is there somebody investigating it? That's my point. As far as I can tell, there's nobody investigating. You don't have any. You've cut your fire people back, so you don't have investigators. And I guess that's right, because tonight you're just telling me you're trying to hire them, but right now you don't have any investigators. Is that correct?
Well, no, we do have two investigators right now. And like I said, the investigation that the Anchorage Fire Department did on your fire happened that night, or the early morning when it happened, when your fire happened. And that investigation didn't reveal a definitive cause for the fire.
Was there a report made?
Yes, there is a report for the fire.
When can I get a copy of the report?
You can get the report right now. Have you reached out to the department to try to get that?
I've called some lady there and left my message. Nobody's ever called me back.
Okay. I'll tell you what.
Let's go on. Let me lower my hand and get out of the queue here. I've made my point here, I guess. We just don't have any help here at this stage.
Yeah, I'd like to help you. And I remember meeting you, and I can get access to your contact information. So would you be okay with me giving you a call?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll get this figured out.
Bye.
Okay, well, Merle, I'm very sorry to hear about your house. Is is it unlivable now?
It's definitely unlivable, won't be livable ever again, probably for us. And the thing is, Kathy, what's important that this fire started outside the house, 4:30 in the morning. It had no ignition areas, there was no electricity there. So I'm just telling everybody that's listening, be careful, because if there's bombs or whatever coming up against your house, that may have been what started this. But we don't know. At this point, as far as I could tell, as I was talking to Andy here, that they don't investigate fires like you would have thought they would have done a few years back, because they don't have any personnel. That's it.
Well, or maybe fewer personnel. I don't know. I mean, Andy did say there's two, but
Yeah.
yeah. Well, geez, Merle, I'm so sorry. Let Dan and I know if we can do anything for you, please. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Andy?
I have my hand raised and I'll
Oh,
make.
sorry, Carolyn. Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
now I see
all right.
it.
The hand blends in with that really awesome wallpaper. Sorry, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but Andy, did you mention that calls for the mobile crisis team are on the rise, or you were expecting them to be on the rise or continue to be on the rise? Could you clarify that a little bit? And I wonder what might be behind that. Again,
Sure.
I'm sure you'd don't want to speculate. Do you think there's
Yeah.
anything kind of?
The mobile crisis team calls have increased. So far this year, they've increased 44% compared to last year. And I can't really account for that increase necessarily. There may be an increased demand. It may be that the team is that we have right now in 2023 is it's just up and running a little bit better than it was in 2022, because it is a new team and it's only been in place for a couple of years. But the numbers have definitely increased. Their call volume has definitely increased significantly. And, of course, if we add 2 more members to that team and turn it from a 12-hour per day operation into a 24-hour per day operation, then I would expect, those call numbers to increase even more. And just knowing that and knowing my history with our community and, from the time that I've been doing this job, I can say that there's definitely a need for what they're doing. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think you helped frame it a little bit more for me. So basically, if you're adding more resources, that means during those off hours, when that first team is not on call, the second team that is on call will naturally receive those calls instead of emergency personnel or traditional emergency personnel. So that's kind of like, if you build it, they will come kind of a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, anybody else? Steve, one more, and then we'll probably wrap this up because we need to continue with our agenda.
All right, Andy, I really appreciate the fact you folks are going to go 24 hours a day, simply because it seems like most of these calls would be from the second shift. So this is really good. I appreciate this is going on. This is a good substitute for the crisis intervention team with the police department.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Andy, for contacting us, and feel free to join our meeting at any time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
Kathy, it's Senator Clayman. I tried to raise
hello,
my
Matt.
hand, but
Welcome. Oh, sorry.
having,
I apologize, Matt.
technological difficulties. Andy, I just wanted to thank you. A friend of mine was the beneficiary of crisis team work in a suicide attempt, and you all did great work. I just want to thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad we could help out.
Okay, that just shows you how important your work is. So I'm sure everyone attending this meeting appreciates it.
Well, thank you.
Yep, thank you. And feel free to stay online on Zoom, but you probably have a few other things to do as well. So good to see you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time again. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, moving on our agenda, for those of you, starting in a little bit later, we approved the agenda by adding Andy in he had requested to be able to present at the beginning of our meeting. So now we'll move on to announcements, and I have about 5 of them, but I hope I'll be really, really quick. So, and then we'll open it up to others. So, got a notice that a transit center study is going to occur. And there's going to be a public transit advisory board virtual meeting on Thursday, October 12th, 5:30 to 7 on Teams. So if you're interested in transit stuff, if you just, Google Anchorage Transit Center study, all the information will pop up for you. And they're looking to do the study to question evaluating the benefits and trade-offs of moving the transit center to a different site downtown or in town. So if you in Midtown, excuse me. And so if you've got any thoughts about that, you can certainly weigh in on that online, or go to this virtual meeting on October 12th. And the Assembly is establishing a new committee. It's called a Quarterly Transportation Committee. So their first quarterly meeting will be held on Wednesday, October 18th in City Hall, room 155. So if you're interested in that, you can go online and find out more information about that. Again, that's a new Assembly committee, and Chair Christopher Constant is he is named Daniel Voland and Meg Zelatel as the co-chairs of that committee. So if you have any, want to give any input on that, then that's a new opportunity to do that. Also, let's see, I got an email from Anna Brawley, one of our 2 Assembly representatives, and she's not going to be able to attend tonight. So Cameron is, I was told Cameron is going to join us. I don't see him on our Zoom yet, but hopefully he will show up at some point. We'd love to see him. So there is a Housing Action Summit on Friday, November 3rd. And there is a Tsunami Hazard Community Meeting on Thursday, October 19th, and Friday, October 20th. So there's lots of stuff going on. And then also November 3rd, there's a Community Housing Action Summit at UAA. So again, lots going on. If you've any information on any of that stuff, of course, you can contact me or Anna, or just go online. But again, that was a Tsunami Hazard Community Meetings, and also a Housing Action Summit on the day after we meet next month, Friday, November 3rd. And then let's see, there's an Upper Cook. Oh, that's the same thing. Sorry about that. Okay, and the last one, I will let Carolyn kind of take over, but I'll give you a hint. She can fill everybody in about this event on Halloween. If Carolyn, you want to step in and announce?
Sure. Yeah. So the Spenard Community Council is hosting again the Trick or Treat Fish Creek event, and that is all along the Fish Creek Trail, starting from Fish Creek Park, also known as the Purple Dinosaur Park, to Barbara Street Park. It's super cute, lots of trick-or-treat stations, lots of activities for little kids and families. It starts on Halloween at 4:30 and it ends at 6:30. Please contact me if you have questions about it, additional questions, or if you want to help volunteer. I believe our next volunteer meeting is, one moment please, I think it's next Tuesday. It's next Tuesday at 6 o'clock at the Spenard Rec Center. So Tuesday, October 10th at 6 o'clock at the Spenard Rec Center. But happy to touch base with anybody offline for further information about that. Again, Trick or Treat Fish Creek Trail. 4:30 to 6:30 on Halloween. Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome, and thank you for volunteering for that event, because I know it hopefully the weather will cooperate and it can be a lot of fun. So But you know, maybe save a little candy if there's any leftovers, you know. Just think about it. Okay, anybody else have any announcements? If not, we will move on our agenda. We have about a 5-minute period where we ask what's new in Turnagain. So does anybody want to share anything under what's new in Turnagain? Any tidbit that neighbors might want to know about? Anybody at all? There's nothing new in Turnagain. Well, our agenda doesn't reflect that at all, but you know, we'll find out more about other stuff going on in Turnagain later, but okay, going once, going twice, nothing for what's new in Turnagain. And that might be a good thing. Things are maybe settling down a little. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit executive board report now. So our next TCC board meeting, we've scheduled via Zoom for October 26th. And if you're interested in joining, Carolyn has already set up the Zoom link for that. I'm spacing, is it from 3 to 4:30? Is that what we're decided on? 3 to 4:30, I think. It sounds about right.
I'll double check and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm pretty sure that was it, but I don't have it in front of me. Okay, and so as we have announced ever since January, there are 2 vacancies on the 2023 board. It's the president and secretary. Now that we're kind of coming into the fall, I don't think anybody's going to jump in at this point to try and take on either of those roles. However, we do have elections for 2024 at our next month's meeting, our November 2nd meeting. And so we typically need to form a nomination committee for the positions, which is president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and 2 at-large board positions. So would anybody like to serve on a nomination committee so then we can have our elections for next month for calendar year 2024? Well, I can serve on it. Would anybody like to join me? Oh,
Kathy,
John,
I'll serve.
excellent.
Yep.
Okay,
Also, you might mention, if we're not mistaken, it sounds like Stephanie has decided that she's not going to run again, and so that seat will also be open.
okay, well, it sounds good. Well, sometimes, you know, it's just de facto if the board wants to help out as well, if there's not. But John, you and I can see what we can do and consult the board as well. So we will hopefully have nominations for all the positions to put forth at our November 2nd election for.
And Kathy, I guess I would encourage anyone who is interested in serving, probably to contact you. Other board members can get an idea of what the commitment would be. And I really would encourage people to consider serving on the board. We do have a number of active regular members here, and I don't know being on the board is that much more work, but that's something to consider.
Okay, thank you, John. I appreciate it. Okay, so then moving forward on our agenda here, Carolyn, our treasurer, would you please give our treasurer's report?
Yes, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is our most recent bank statement, and as you'll see here, we have in our checking account, we have $250.05, and in our savings account, we have $1,616.36. That is largely the end of my report. Not really much to share beyond that, Kathy, unless you think there's something that I might have overlooked.
No, I think that's pretty. So this is this as of 8/31 or 9/31 or 9/30?
As of 8/31, we don't have the statement yet from FCC for through the month of September.
Okay, Yep. Yeah.
But
that
we
probably
should be
is-
getting that, I would think, because this is the September 8th statement. So I would think we'll probably get the statement for September, probably October 8th, give or take a few days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're not rich, but we do have a little bit. You know, it depends how big of a party we may want to throw at some point. And that is off the record. So. Okay, does anybody have any
Report.
questions for Carolyn as treasurer? Don't see any hands
Well,
raised.
Dan has his hand raised.
Daniel,
Yes, I got a question. I noticed that we are getting charged $5 a month for for fees for the bank, for the account. Is that should we I know $5 a month is not much, but if we don't have any money coming in, that's kind of pretty tough for a small account like this.
Yeah,
Well-
it'll definitely deteriorate. I don't know, Kathy, have we always been at North Rim, or have we ever looked at changing banks at any point?
we have not always been at North Rim. We used to be at the one that's kind of right across the street on the south side with the, where the Safeway used to be and all that, where Alaska Club is.
Northern,
Oh.
First National.
First National. So we used to have an account with them, and they charged more with that kind of stuff. So then we switched to North Rim. And if my memory serves me right, if it's an inactive account, if there's no deposits or if there's no check written, then they charge us because it's kind of inactive. If we had activity, I don't think we'd be charged that. So if anybody wants to donate, we are not a nonprofit, so it would not be deductible. If anybody wants to donate some money so it can put in our account, we're not going to be charged that fee. Or if we pay for something and write out a check. I'm pretty sure that's how it's based. It's like an inactive fee. And Pat, you've got your hand raised.
Right, I was gonna suggest that if anybody would like to donate to the cause, that would help keep the account active. So that we don't, I don't remember either whether they don't charge, but that's about the lowest fee you can find in town.
So Dan, since you asked the question, would you deposit some money in that account tomorrow? Just put it on your to-do
We'll
list.
discuss it after the meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so thank you, Carolyn. Okay, let's see. All right, so what's next here? Federation of Community Councils delegate report. So Carolyn, you're up again. She is the Turnagain delegate for FCC.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So we held our last meeting a couple of Wednesdays ago. My timeline is really warped because I've been traveling so much, but we had a hybrid meeting at the FCC conference room on Fireweed. It was really great to meet with everybody in person. We had our typical agenda, the FCC, I'm also the FCC treasurer, and we've been trying to fine tune some of our processes and procedures lately. And so what we were trying to implement with a meeting on Wednesday is trying to make sure that we have very limited and time efficient presentations from our elected officials. We received mostly positive feedback in that arena, but not everybody appreciated that kind of timeline. So we're gonna continue to see like how that kind of plays out before we make any other kind of major adjustments. But so we're testing that out. And we also, of particular note, had two presentations. One was a presentation to the delegates from Municipal Ombudsman Daryl Hess. And he gave basically a community councils 101, which is really informative, super helpful, and kind of took us back to, the point of community councils, what they're there for, what the act what the activity is supposed to encompass, and how we're supposed to engage and participate in the civics process, including with our elected officials, and others within the municipality. And as part of that conversation, he talked about, the possibility of having some training. And so the FCC Executive Board is looking at the possibility of holding a training for all community council members and potentially the community at large to learn more about the community councils, the process, our role in the municipal, because we are in the municipal charter, all of these things, just kind of to further inform and enlighten as far as this is the purpose of community councils, and how we engage together and as a community and with our elected officials, in particular at the local level. It was a really great presentation, and hopefully there will be more to come on that will be really exciting for folks on this call and beyond. The second presentation that we had was Assembly members Anna Brawley and Daniel Voland joined to give a presentation about the Home Initiative, which is the latest Assembly initiative to examine our residential zoning districts, and how we can perhaps find efficiencies to more effectively encourage housing development in the Anchorage Bowl. So the home initiative, I don't remember what the AO number is, but it's meant specifically for the Anchorage Bowl. It does not capture or affect Girdwood or Chugiak Eagle River. But that is something that is a pretty big initiative that the Assembly is working on right now. And Kathy, you'll probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it's being sent to planning and zoning so that planning and zoning can take a look at what's outlined in the AO and make their recommendations and go through their own kind of stakeholder process to provide recommendations to return to the Assembly at a later date for further public engagement and input. The FCC meeting was recorded. And so please let me know if you're interested in watching the meeting. It was really great with both of those presentations, and there was a lot of opportunity for Q&A engagement. I think, and the other thing that I will report, this didn't happen at the meeting, but I believe it was posted today. The FCC is just posted the job description for the member, for the FCC manager position. So I'll find a link to that and I'll put it in the chat for everybody so you can take a look at it, see what the job duties are. Maybe somebody on this call is interested in applying for the position, but please share the position and the position description and know that we're actively searching for a new FCC manager effective immediately. I believe that's the end of my report. Happy to take any questions. And again, I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. I think the AO is 2023-87, but if I remember correctly, Anna and Daniel said there will be an S version. So I don't know if that's come out yet or not with regard to that whole effort with zoning districts, our zoning districts, and reducing the amount and so forth. So I haven't seen it, but what the initial one is 2023-87.
Yeah, and the S version may come after it goes through planning and zoning, but I'm not I'm not super in the weeds with all that kind of nuance, but happy to follow up if anybody has questions.
Okay, John, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I think Carolyn, either you or Kathy shared the PowerPoint presentation. So we have that available. I don't know if there's a way to kind of put a link to it in the chat, but for anybody who's interested in it, it's worth looking at because it does explain a little bit behind the ordinance, the intent. So thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that in the chat. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thanks, Carolyn. And I think they are going around to community councils and showing it, but I mean, it's a kind of a long presentation, and then of course they verbally add to it. So there's no way we have time at our regularly scheduled monthly meetings for that sort of thing. We've got too much on the agenda. But we could always do it at a land use committee meeting at a future time. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, let's see, moving on from FCC delegate report is just FYI, Anna Brawley had emailed the West Anchorage councils with regard to asking councils what the assembly should focus on as far as legislative priorities. And so Matt, you might want to perk your ears open on this one. So I replied and told them that our number one CIP, capital improvement project that we have identified now for more than 1 year is dealing with the Tony Nose Coastal Trail and associated erosion at Point Warrenzoff, because it's been serious for a long time, and made the point that our council is concerned about the trail itself. It's a nationally recognized trail that has fallen off that area once, in the mid-90s, and had to be moved inland, and now it won't take that many years at a rate of anywhere from 3 to 6 feet a year erode from that bluff. And so it definitely threatens the coastal trail, and if it's not addressed sooner rather than later, obviously the road and then the end of the north-south runway over time could be threatened if we don't do things as a state and as a city, and as it's going to cost a lot of money. Estimate several years ago was about 45 million. I'm sure that number would be much higher, but so I just want to let everybody know I responded to Anna's email letting her know that our number one ranked project is dealing with the erosion at Point Warrenzoff, and how it threatens the coastal trail and could threaten other important amenities out there on the point. So Pat, you've got your hand raised.
Right. The other part would be the end of Postmark Drive. That's all. The viewing point is closed off now because of the side falling off. Anyway, that's another part of I'm assuming that's part of the Point Warrenzoff erosion.
Well, that's a fair length away from the point itself, so we'd have to get clarification to see the scope of that project.
We'll have to, John might be able to tell us later, but that's been blocked off now with security tapes and stuff to say, you can't go in and look at the maps and stuff there.
Yeah, I've
So
certainly noticed that, but didn't really know. I didn't know if they were vandalized or what the issue was. So it's good to
no,
know.
the side is falling away.
Wow. Okay.
Just as one more part of it, and so that's all.
Yeah, and with regard to potentially getting state funding, in turn, that, and Matt, you could certainly would know more. There's probably federal money out there now as part of bills that have passed that could potentially be tapped into, because it will be a very expensive project. Okay, just that was FYI. So then moving on, I got an email from a neighbor who lives on Lord Baranoff Drive, and she had witnessed not long ago a child almost getting hit by a speeding car on Lord Baranoff. And so she wanted to know, well, she contacted the traffic department, and they said you have to get a resolution to request a traffic calming study from the community council. So she contacted me, and I explained to her the process. I also had the unfortunate task of telling her there's actually 16 streets within our boundaries where other neighbors have requested traffic calming features on their streets, because speeding and safety, those issues exist in every neighborhood and all over town, and certainly all over Turnagain. So, but I did say, despite that, those odds, because, and those projects have not, they're streets that the traffic department currently are not considering doing anything with in their limited funding. And they go through a process every year where they evaluate requests and so forth. So, so I told her, but she should go ahead and try and get a petition put together and neighbors sign it. And I didn't hear from her within the last week or so. So she obviously didn't pull that together for tonight's meeting. But just FYI, it might be on our November 2nd meeting if they follow through with that, if her and her neighbors follow through with that request to the council for a resolution to potentially get something done, at least add it to the list. So let's see, we got 2 more things under executive board report. So the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission met on September 14th to consider the Lineary Park Public Naming Committee's recommendations with regard to naming 4 amenities at the park. And as this has been going on for quite a while now, but as a reminder, it would be the Memorial Garden, the Michelle Byron Memorial Garden there on up by the Coastal Trail, one of the Marston Field Diamonds that would be named after John Opensky, who was an active Little League coach and participant, and unfortunately passed away. And then another diamond named after Bob Durst. And some of you older time community council people certainly would know who Bob is. He was a board member with the council, also very active with Little League and tended the fields for many, many years. And then also the tennis courts up at the upper level along Iliamna, where they were rehabilitated because the Hendrickson family and Turnagain donated a significant amount of money as matching with the Anchorage Park Foundation grant. And so the committee has been going through that process and going all the things required by code to get those all formally named. And the Parks and Recreation Department unanimously supported the Byron Garden and the 2 baseball diamonds, Marston Field baseball diamonds. They did not support naming officially naming the tennis courts after the Hendrickson family because it wasn't anything permanent. Eventually those courts will wear out again, and who knows, somebody else may donate money to, upgrade them or rehabilitate them in the future. So they didn't feel like it fit the criteria for formal naming. So that was the so that's what the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission action that they took on the 14th of September. And now the final step everything will go before the assembly. And I don't have a date of when that public hearing will take place, but I'll, let everybody know when that happens. So that's an update. And finally, the Heritage Land Bank is get that out of the way. The Heritage Land Bank is holding open houses in October. One in Girdwood, October 16th. One in Anchorage at the Permit and Development Center there on Elmore Drive on Tuesday the 7th, October 17th, and then a virtual Wednesday, October 25th. And it's just to give the opportunity to the community to have an open discussion with HLB staff about current and potential projects, especially what was identified in the 2024 plan that we reviewed and submitted comment along with the five-year management plan. So FYI, and we will continue to track that because we do have HLB property within our boundaries there west of the airport. So, and we do have recommendations within those documents that we worked with Eric Croft to get language in there quite some time ago. So we continue to follow that. But I don't recall them ever having open houses like this before. So kudos maybe to the manager that was approved by the assembly, maybe a couple months ago or so. So that's all I have for executive board report. Phew. Let's see, how are we doing on time and how's our agenda looking? So we're kind of behind, but has Cameron joined us as far as an assembly report? I don't see Cameron on.
I don't believe he's here. I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Well, then we'll just go ahead and move on to legislative report. So Senator Matt Clayman, you have the airtime. Let's see. Did Matt disappear on me? I thought I just saw him. Where'd he go?
He's muted. He's muted.
Oh, Matt, can you unmute yourself, please?
How's that?
Oh, there you
Turn
go.
the video on to unmute. I apologize.
Okay. You have the floor.
I don't have a whole lot to report. I think one of the areas of particular interest in this community, the Criminal Justice Data Analysis Commission I serve on, put a recommendation that UAA is trying to get some federal money to do more study of crime victims in Alaska and get a better picture of some of the unique challenges we have in Alaska. And so I was pleased the Data Analysis Commission supported that. We're obviously we're now 3 months away from going back to Juneau. So we'll be reaching out to the community councils just to see different agenda items. And Kathy, I certainly appreciate Turnagain's long interest in the Point Warrens-off erosion issue. I think it's important that say in capital focus. I think it's also really important that we communicate with the federal delegation and continue our communications with the airport on that topic, because I think any kind of solution is going to require a combination of federal money, state money, and a real leadership from the airport. Prioritizing that as really essential to protecting that airport resource as one of our great West Anchorage resources. As I like to say, more people come through the West Anchorage Senate District than any other district in the state. So we want that airport working well.
Yeah, and Matt, if I could interject, I don't know a lot about this. I heard it, but I don't have any that the Muni and the airport actually recently signed some kind of, I don't know, memorandum of agreement or something where they are both on board identifying that as an important issue. But I don't have any information about it. So I think I don't think we have to worry about the airport as far as not identifying that as something important to address. But maybe you can find out more information about what may have actually occurred.
Well, we'll follow up on that memorandum of understanding between the airport and the municipality. And I think John Johansson can probably give us an update on that.
Yeah, John's with us. He could probably fill us in on that. Yeah, thanks, Matt.
But anyway, those are the main things I've got to report on. Obviously, the capital budget's going to be a big consideration, and the Point Warrens-off erosion is a really big project. Don't be sure to submit your little projects too, because sometimes we may have more success identifying little projects as we continue to look forward to big projects. And just glad we're all back and enjoying the fall weather in Alaska.
Okay. Well, when I sent Anna that email, I did attach our approved CIP list. So it has, a lot more other projects than just the erosion. But let's see. Merle, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Matt, I haven't heard back. And have you followed up on whether or not the meetings with the airlines has to be an open public meeting? And if you're not going to follow up on that and get a determination that if they have been exempted from that by state law, then we need to know how the exemption works. And the other thing, means you just brought it up, you guys are keep looking for improvements at the airport. Remember that all of this has to be approved by the airlines. And if you're not in the meetings, you're not going to get these things approved. Now, back to what I asked you before, Matt. In July, we met and we talked about it. There is the Public Meetings Act. And as far as I can see, the state is obligated to open those meetings up with the airlines to the public. But if they are not, then they have to have an exemption, and we need to, and the airport has never supplied a copy of that exemption. And the exemption requires that I think it requires the Attorney General to give an opinion that they are not, and then have to express why they are not, those meetings can be closed. Please, and get involved in this now, Matt, before it's too much longer.
Merle, I believe we did have an initial response to you that we had communicated to the airport that the airport's perspective, which is supported by the Attorney General, is that private meetings amongst the airlines do not require an open meetings notice. I understand that's not a perspective that you agree with, but we did communicate with the airport about that, and our understanding from those communications is that the Attorney General's office takes the same position, that the meetings of the private airlines are not subject to the Public Open Meetings Act.
Well, Matt, then you must have a copy of that Attorney General's opinion, and you didn't get it, and you're not going to get it because that meeting, all those meetings are open to the public. And if they're not open to the public, then they have to close them in a procedure. So let's get on the ball, Matt, and help us out here so that we can get involved in those meetings. If the Attorney General wrote something, then you must have a copy of it. And would you please supply myself and Kathy Gleason with a copy of that so we all know that they are exempted from it. I don't think they have been, but if you think they have been exempted from it, and the Attorney General has written an exemption for it, let's see the exemption.
All right. I do not
Thank you,
believe the Attorney General has issued a formal opinion exempting them. I think the Attorney General has articulated in communications that are not a formal Attorney General's memo, but I will continue to follow up on that question you've raised. I believe the airlines have taken the position that their meetings are private and not subject to the Public Open Meetings Act. And the Attorney General, as I understand it, without issuing a formal opinion, has agreed with that position. I know that's not the view that.
Well,
but I understand
he can't just issue by the terms of the Open Meetings Act. That has to be in writing. Let's see it in writing. It has to be in writing, and we all have to understand what those meetings are about. And the meetings are about funding the airport.
We will follow up further. We've had initial follow-up. I know you don't have the same perspective that the airport has, and I have the same perspective that the Attorney General's office has, but we will continue to follow up on this.
Well, it's the Attorney General. If they have followed the rules, if they're not accepted, if they're exempted from the public meetings, those meetings are exempted to the public and are closed meetings, then the Attorney General has to issue an opinion, and it'll express why the meetings are closed and what the reason for it is.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Thank you, Merle. And Matt, if you can find any kind of documentation, whether it's a formal declaration or an email or a letter where the state attorney general has expressed that those are private meetings, and that's what we're looking for, some documentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anybody else have a question for Matt? I don't see any other hands raised, so thank you so much, Matt, for joining us this evening. And is anybody here from the mayor's office by chance? I don't believe so, so we'll move on. And school board report. I did look up who's supposed to be attending Turnigan Community Council meetings, and it's Dave Donnelly. He's been appointed for the 23-24 school year, but I don't see him.
This is Dave Donnelly. I'm here.
Oh, Dave. Okay, well, see, I didn't have any idea who's calling in. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. You have the floor.
Obviously, well, we've had multiple meetings this week. I'm trying to think. There's so many big issues before the school board right now. Of course, overwhelmingly is the issue of the budget. I don't know what rabbit in the hat they're going to pull out at the last moment here, whether it's FEMA funds coming through or something else. But if something really miraculous doesn't happen, we're faced with a massive, massive shortfall in funding just to maintain the status quo in our already overcrowded classrooms. So that's going to be a huge issue ongoing into next year. We have to produce a balanced budget within 6 months of now, and I really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel right now, how we're going to achieve that. As you know, the board voted last year to increase class sizes. I voted against that. Because I thought there were other places I wanted to reduce the budget rather than increase class sizes. And now we're getting lots of feedback from the community about the class size increases. We had a really, really amazing report at noon today at the Finance Committee regarding the state school funding formula. And as you all know, for years and years, I've been an advocate for a new area district cost differential. When we wrote the 96 Act that created the formula for state funding in Alaska, we never, ever anticipated we would go this long without an updated area district cost differential. That report today was very, very comprehensive and clearly indicates that our school children are being not treated fairly in the state formula. My own personal calculations, it could mean as much as 3 children per class in our class sizes that we're being short funded on objective analysis of the actual cost of delivering education in the state. And we need the Anchorage caucus legislators to step up and introduce legislation on this subject, in my personal opinion. It's way overdue, it needs to be addressed, and it's desperately causing a huge chunk of our current shortfall is the failure of the legislature to update the district cost differential in the formula. Additionally, we're examining a really interesting revision into how secondary education is delivered by creating these academies that children will opt in, the students will opt into, that will put them on a career and or college-ready course. And it's really exciting. The school districts around the nation that have started this type of programs are reporting huge successes in graduation rates and also in the success of the kids going on to vocational schools and to college. So we're really, really excited about this. It plays into one of the 3 target primary goals that the Anchorage School Board has adopted, which I push really hard for, number 3. Number 1 is reading proficiency. Number 2 is math. Number 3 is career, college, and life readiness. And we've already instituted into the basic curriculum now, financial literacy, which is a great first start, but now we're really expanding on that concept with these career academies to make sure we're graduating citizens, people who are ready to move out from a school and become useful citizens and members of our community. So I'm really excited. I feel really positive about that. Also, as you know, we've lost over 5,000 students, more like 7,000 students or more over the last few years. That's resulted in pretty serious under capacity being utilized in our schools. The district, the administration recently estimated that even if we shut down 10 of our existing schools, we'd still only be at 90% of capacity district-wide on an average. It's been many years since the board has taken the bit in its teeth and dealt with districts. There's a lot of districting that could be affected, but seem to want to postpone that until after some decisions made on school closure. There's been no specific schools targeted this time around like the administration did last year, but they are going to do a very aggressive outreach to the community to discuss the merits of closing down some schools. And last year they told us they were going to be looking at closing 10 schools. It's not going to happen this year, of course. It'd be something that's in the near future, but it's a significant step towards, it would be a significant step to closing our budget gap and also doing a better job of delivering services to our students, because the way schools are currently underpopulated, it's more and more difficult to provide them with special services that you can, counseling, special reading consultants, other types of special programs like that, that you can if there's a higher volume of students in a particular school. So that's one of the reasons. It's not just monetary, it's also academic and helping to the success of our students. With all that, I know that's a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. There's a ton more things going on.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dave. Does anybody have any questions? Pat, you've got a question?
Yes, Dave, this is Pat Redmond, and it's been a long time since I've talked to you, but was it the Anchorage School Board that was looking at considering moving 6th grade in with 7th and 8th?
Yes, the school board supported the recommendation of the administration that within the next couple of years, all our 6th graders are going to be, well, most of them, not the ones in alternative schools.
Didn't we do this before? Didn't we look at that before a number of years ago, like, well, 20 years ago, and decide it wasn't a good idea?
Could have been. I wasn't there 20 years ago. I was in the legislature.
you were in the legislature then. Anyway, it just seemed like here we go again, and I'm going round and we're going round in circles. I don't know if it's a good idea. I just know that I worked with 7th and 8th graders, and I've worked with 5th and 6th graders, and there's a big difference between 6th graders and 7th graders. It's just something that happens over that summer that changes them, and they're not the same students. I don't know if it's a good idea to do this. I think we're okay the way we are, but that's my comment for now.
Pat, I'd say a lot of people agree with you. We've had considerable public comment on the subject, and it pretty much falls in line with what you're saying. Unfortunately, there was no public comment last spring when the board voted to approve the plan presented by the administration to transfer our 6th graders into middle schools. We've already got 6th graders at probably 4 middle schools already, and this would complete that process. The administration felt very strongly about it. They felt it was going to allow 6th grade to continue to do some the kind of programs that you can only get in middle school if we go through budget cuts and lose those in the elementary schools, such as 6th grade band. That's been on the table the last couple of years to cut. If they were in a middle school, they'd still be able to provide that. So that was one of the things behind it from an academic point of view. Of course, one of the other major things is that completing the transition would further facilitate school closures.
That's true. Okay. I just thought I must have missed that some of them were already moved over, but because in the discussion the other night, I didn't catch that. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks,
you bet.
Pat.
Thank you. Good question.
Don't see anybody else's hand raised, Dave. So thank you so much for attending this evening. And I'm glad to see you're going to be participating for our school calendar year into next spring. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I want to thank all you taxpayers for your great support of the Anchorage schools. We're one of only 5 communities in the entire state that contributes our local maximum to our schools. So we're all very grateful for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your service on the board. Okay, we'll move on to airport report. And I kind of have a long string of things that John Johansson was probably like, what? So I know he'll do his best because he always does. So thank you, John, for attending. And we'd love to hear the airport report from you. And you're unmuted. I mean, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself, there you go.
Yeah. I'll be pretty quick in going through this airport update, which, by the way, Kathy has posted on your website for October. The parking garage is still under construction. Levels 1 and 2 are shut down, so levels 3 and 4 are available. We hope to have levels 1 and 2 complete by the end of this month or early next month. And then all the parking garage will be open until next early spring, April time. We will shut down the 4th floor for repairs on that, and that'll probably be done in June sometime. So light is there's light at the end of the tunnel for that project. Our seasonal summer flights were officially over on the 23rd of September when the last Condor flight flew. So all of our seasonal summer additional connections around the country are over. We have a new concession of significance in the C concourse, right at the beginning of the C concourse across from Starbucks. And that is 49th State Brewing Company, which, yes, is the same one that's downtown. And they have been doing quite well. We've got a great menu, and we're really excited about that. And so if you're in the terminal, that's a good place to get something, a bite to eat, just inside security. The FedEx expansion project in the Turnagain Bog, they're having a public open house on their environmental assessment that they're working through. And that's on October 16th at the Coast Inn from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And so they're working through their environmental assessment process. So is Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage, but they had their public open house, I believe, on Monday. And there were 3 people from the public, and they all happened to be from Turnagain Community Council that were at that open house. And let's see, about the only other thing on this update that I'm going to speak to is we still have a lot of jobs available at the airport. So if you know people that are looking for work, there's some links to websites that would be beneficial to go look into. Regarding well, I'll speak to the erosion that's recently shown up on what we used to call Airport Park, which is at the intersection of Northern Lights and Postmark Road. And we've kind of cut off the area where the erosion has occurred. Our field maintenance folks are going to work on a program to repair that erosion. That erosion is not the same kind of erosion that's going on at Point Warrensoff. It's more related to storm drainage runoff in a concentrated area that's been eating away at the slope. Whereas the Point Warrensoff is associated with wave and tidal action at the base of the bluff, eating away the base of the bluff and causing the bluff to slough. Many years ago, I think it's probably 10 now, we worked with the Corps of Engineers to have an initial study done. I can't remember what they referred to it as, but it was a Corps of Engineers
study, a reconnaissance study.
Reconnaissance study, thank you.
Yeah.
And that was an effort that was 100% done by the Corps of Engineers. They identified a problem. Yes, the bluff is eroding. They came up with a concept to stop the erosion and a cost. And I think Kathy's correct. The overall thing was about 45 or 50 million. Since then, probably 5 or more years ago, we, as the airport, signed an agreement with the Corps to do a feasibility study, which is essentially all the field work necessary to support a design and proceeding with design to about a 35% design level and a cost estimate. And we were signing up as the local sponsor, committing $1.5 million to that effort, and the Corps was going to commit the other $1.5 million. Once they got congressional approval, that never happened. When that agreement with the Corps expired, we worked with the municipality to be joint local sponsors with us. And so we re-upped our commitment as the local sponsor jointly with the municipality about a year ago. So we're still trying to get the Corps to come up with their $1.5 million to do that feasibility study. And so as Matt mentioned, a letter to your congressional delegation in DC would help that effort. But that's where it stands right now. Looking for the feds to get the money to proceed ahead with that feasibility study. So I think that covers those two issues. Kathy, I think, wanted me to run through the cargo developments and lease applications, et cetera. I think you're all aware that the Northlink cargo development on the south side of the airport got approval from FAA to proceed ahead. And I think they are proceeding ahead, but limited construction this fall. They've started work on the access road, which I believe is their only planned work this year. And then next summer they'd proceed ahead with the more significant part of the construction. And then I've touched on where the FedEx development is and where the Alaska cargo and cold storage developments are. They're working on their environmental approval. Let's see, we've got the TLC lease. TLC has come to our leasing folks, trying to work with leasing on a modified plan for that development. No updates on that. The planned development on the east side of the Lake Hood Strip, private hangar development. The winning bidder on that has yet to sign a lease agreement with the airport. I believe they're digging into some of the financial issues, but so that one is kind of on hold temporarily. And I think that covers pretty much all of them. So I'm willing to entertain any questions and answer them as I might be able to.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank John and Terry Linseth and the manager, Craig Campbell, for meeting with John Isaacs and Lamar Cotton and myself last week, week ago today, I believe. And it was a very good meeting, very informative. We had some good discussions. So we're going to try and do that on a quarterly or whenever needed basis. And we really appreciate them hosting us to go visit them on their turf to discuss a lot of this stuff. And so one of the things that you, or actually a couple things that you had told us that I'd love for you to go ahead and share with those attending our council meeting this evening was the latest with regard to Lake Spenard Beach Park, as far as, you know, potential development there, but also park amenities. And then also, because I don't recall ever hearing any kind of updates for a long time, and you certainly provided us with the proposal that had come up a few years ago and the UPS expansion idea. And then we can take questions.
Okay, I think you're talking, UPS was tentatively planning on leasing the property north of what used to be cargo port, the very north end of what of North Air Park, between the current UPS property and Point Warrenzoff, or excuse me, and West Northern Lights. They did not follow through with that lease. I can't remember if they actually signed a lease and then terminated it or what, but there is no plan there for development of that property at the moment. The Spenard Beach Park, as Merle mentioned, brought up last meeting, we have been working at very elementary level with the municipality to take back some of the waterfront to build about 4 what's the word? Temporary.
A transient.
Parking.
Transient.
What's that?
Transient? Is that the word you're?
Transient, yes. Transient parking spots for aircraft that are just visiting, and then converting the existing, doing some improvements and converting some existing transient spots, which are beyond either side of the park, into actual leasable aircraft parking positions. The idea is not to have a significant impact on the park and certainly not shut off the waterfront of the park. in the areas that is most heavily used. So that's all I have to update on that.
Okay.
That's a work in progress.
Yeah, thanks, John. And one other thing that was pretty thrilling for me to hear is you guys indicated that you would be looking at, potential funding to help implement phase 2 of our plans to enhance Spenard Beach Park, like with some expensive playground equipment and so forth. So Sarah Haley certainly knows about that. She was our chair of the committee and worked really hard on that, and can't be in that role anymore since she works for the airport. But maybe next year we can get serious about implementing things like that. And it was just really nice to hear that the airport may step up and help us out with that.
Well, you and I heard it first at the same time, so it was a surprise to me.
Well, good. I mean, there are plenty of witnesses now. There's 5 witnesses
Nobody had cleared
of
that.
what Craig said. So, well, hopefully that will, we'll just, it's on it. Yeah, we know it now. So you can't step away from that. Just can't. Okay, let's see. Jonathan Galen, you have your hand up, and then I see Merle, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Kathy. John, how are you? I have a
I'm doing
question.
fine, Jonathan.
I think it's now 2 years and we've talked about resurfacing Lakeshore Drive and Aircraft Drive, and it's pretty bad again. So here we are 2 years later and nothing. It was supposed to happen this summer, and so the second summer, and nothing's happened. So is that ever going to happen?
Well, the problem was we didn't get our environmental document completed, environmental clearance completed in time for this summer construction. So it's first thing out of the chute next summer. And yeah, it's a pretty lumpy, bumpy road.
Okay, well, as they say, all you can do is hope. Thank you.
Okay, Merle, you have your hand up.
John, you didn't mention the new tower construction, and I want to know about that new tower construction. I want to know I want to know the reroute on all the traffic so that we can determine how much of that's going to impact our neighborhoods. And it has to be impacted. We have to know what that is, because we know that tower has got to impact. If they build that darn thing, it is going to impact the traffic over our neighborhoods here. And we need to know that ASP, not wait until whenever. And I understand there was supposed to have been a meeting on that tower, which has never been held at this point. So when is that tower? When is the public going to be informed about that tower? Thank you, John. The new tower I'm talking about, John.
I'm not sure what meeting you're referring to. I assume you're talking about the environmental assessment public meeting.
No, I am really, we were told at one point, like 2 months ago, by the FAA, that they were going to have a meeting, and there was going to be a meeting with the airport and the FAA, so we here in the public can know all about that tower, and we can ask questions about how it's going to impact our neighborhood. Come on. It's getting late in the season here now.
Well, I'm not familiar with what that meeting was. Let me speak to your first issue about construction traffic.
Sure.
They are in the midst of design. They plan to have a draft environmental assessment out in December or January for public review and comment. And I would highly recommend that you make your concerns known about construction traffic. Construction traffic is going to be something that's, going to be worked out late in the game. There are routes to go that don't impact your neighborhood. I have no idea what their plan is. It's an FAA project. for construction, but, you know, that's
John,
something
let me-
that would be very
John,
good
let
to
me-
talk about.
John, let me
in the
interrupt
evening
you.
times.
I can't, John, can I interrupt you? I'm not talking about the construction
Yes.
topic. I'm talking about the aircraft traffic. I'm talking about the rerouting of the aircraft over the neighborhoods here. That's what I'm talking. I don't care about how they're going to construct it. I'm concerned about how the airplanes are going to fly. This is an airport. We need to know that these routes are going to take traffic over our neighborhood. It's going to impact it some way. It's got to. When are we going to find out about that?
Merle, I don't have any idea. I don't know. I don't recall a commitment of a meeting from FAA to discuss that.
Well, the FAA was going to have a meeting. They're going to build a tower. They should have had a meeting to first tell us they were going to build a tower. And then we could ask all these questions. Where is the traffic going before they start putting stuff in the ground? Where is this all this? Okay.
I don't know that there's a significant change in traffic patterns associated with a new tower.
Well, I don't either, but we want to find out about it. We have a right to know. You know, this is a public process. We, the public, have a right to know. Ask these questions before they build that tower, and we find out we have a mess here.
Merle, do you have the name of the contact who's leading, the local person who's leading that effort for FAA?
No, we
His
had
name
John
is- his
Isaacson
name-
and I both tried at one point in time to get a hold of the FAA guy that they told us about in the meeting. Typical FAA people, they never have returned one phone call.
Okay, well, the person to contact at the FAA about the tower is Wilson Platt.
Don't know him, haven't heard of him, but I can tell you, we at this public right now, if they're putting this tower on airport lands. This is airport property, state of Alaska airport property. As a citizen of the state of Alaska, you know that by the Constitution of the state, we have a right to know that before they build all this stuff. And we need to find that out before they do it. I understand that the present administration, Mr. Campbell and them, were not the ones that agreed to all this. But nevertheless, we're going to get the suffering here in this neighborhood if we don't get on top of it. And right now, you come to these meetings and tell us all about the issues, the things that are going on in the terminal building. What's the big thing is going to be what's going on outside the terminal building over our neighborhoods with the traffic.
Okay, Merle, I'm gonna let
Like-
John Isaacs has raised his hand. And
And by the way,
And-
Kathy, if you guys met with the Campbell, how come I didn't get to back? I thought I was on your committee. How come I didn't get to go out there with you when you met with Campbell this last week?
well, it was always just kind of three appointees because these aren't like land use committee meetings. And Anna Brawley, because she was president last year, it was Anna and myself and John. Of
Okay,
course,
well, you
Anna
guys
was
need to be
not
asking the
engaged,
right.
so,
I'm
you know, we can talk about that offline and certainly want to chat with you about that. So that meeting that was held there at Coast Inn, Merle, that you referenced, you know, we did give a lot of input and we asked a lot of questions, and Turnagain Community Council did approve, and we sent a letter to FAA with regards to the tower and Charlie parking relocation. And we brought up that issue that you raised as well as many others, and did that as a precursor to the environmental assessment that John Johansson said will be out in December or January, because we wanted that environmental assessment to include those issues. So that's kind of what we're waiting on, is see if the EA included all the things that we identified as a council that we want to see addressed in that document. But John Isaacs, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Kathy, you kind of said what I was going to say, you know, thanks to Merle's, suggestion, we did add that question in the letter in our scoping comments about they have to address how the tower is going to change civilian air traffic, whether fixed or float. There was a meeting, we have tried to get a meeting with FAA and they really don't seem to be interested. So the next step, I think from what we heard from John at our meeting with Craig Campbell, is that it looks like there's going to be a delay in the release of their EA to perhaps December of January. And I guess we'll see at that point in time what they have done with it. And they'll probably have a public hearing on that draft EA, but if they have not addressed that issue, we're going to have to continue to point that out as a deficiency in their analysis that they're going to need to address.
Yeah, we'll definitely be tracking that because it's pretty important. We identified numerous things that yeah. And so Carolyn, if you are gone now or you're leaving, so yeah, take care. Thank you and enjoy your visit back east. And we'll connect at some point when you get back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm signing off, everybody. Thank you. I'll see you next
Okay.
month.
Thank you so much. Okay, we need to move on our agenda. And so under old and new business, we're continuing the airport theme here. So as was presented, Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage environmental assessment comments are due next, let's see, well, on the 15th. It's on a Sunday for some reason. And the FedEx expansion environmental assessment, they're holding a workshop on October 17th with comments due October 31st. Turnagain Community Council has already submitted comment letters on when lease applications for those two projects came up, as well as when wetland fill permit notices went out. So we've submitted extensive comments on our concerns about these projects that we want addressed already. John and husband Dan and I did attend the Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage open house just the other Monday, and yes, we were the only three there, so we appreciate the staff and those associated with that to put up with us. It was discussed a lot of things, a lot of the things we've already identified as a community council. So we had a land use committee meeting, I forgot what day that was, in September, where we reviewed and discussed both of these EAs to a certain extent. And we haven't crafted any formal new comment letters for the council to approve, just because, this is a lot to take in. They're happening pretty well simultaneously for we volunteers. And so, but we pretty well have the issues identified. And so we felt like what we're asking the council to do tonight is to just kind of reinforce that the issues and comments that we've submitted before and identified, that we pretty well reiterate things that we have already formally agreed to as a community council. And John, if you want to go ahead and jump in at this point, if I'm kind of missing explanations on anything.
Let me make sure I'm unmuted. I think you kind of covered it. I wanted to go into a bit more detail. Essentially, what they're proposing to do is develop 29 acres of land on the west side of Postmark Drive. They're going to put in 8 new hard stands for cargo jets and a climate-controlled warehouse. And so we provided comments the first time around on issues related to noise, air quality, water quality, and contamination, wetlands fill, and truck traffic and cumulative effects. And in reading the draft EA, it's addressed some of those, but really not all of them. And so we're going to get a little bit more specific this time around. What we want to basically say is that they need to incorporate, because they're somewhat wishy-washy about electric power supply to the cargo hard stands. If they do that, it eliminates the need for the auxiliary power generators, and both reduces noise and reduces air quality. So that's something we want a commitment to. We also want the impact analysis. They tend to use airport-wide statistics to say there's really not going to be any impact, and that's not completely accurate. So we really want them to be a bit more accurate about acknowledging that by having some activity closer to the neighborhoods, there is going to be more noise and more air quality.
Hey,
Uh,
John,
Go ahead.
could you just give us a definition on hard stand?
Sure. So a hard stand, and I think John Johansson, if he's still there, can correct me if I misrepresent
Thank you.
this, but essentially it's either a concrete or some other reinforced pad that the large cargo jets are parked on. And so it's essentially an area where, it's safe for a large, heavy jet to be parked on while it's either being refueled or you're having any sort of cargo transfer. And John put the thumbs up. Okay, so that's kind of what it is. And hard stands are kind of in short supply at the airport. It's one of the things they're talking about building at the South Park facility. And from what we heard, either from Alaska Cold Storage or perhaps at the meeting with Craig Campbell, there may be some parking areas that may be eliminated in front of the terminal. And so, these hard stands will probably be meeting existing traffic, not necessarily a lot of new jet traffic. So they're going to have those hard stands. We want them to provide a power supply to that for the reasons I've stated. We also are, requesting, they have talked about what they're going to do in terms of surface and groundwater contamination. And while they're going to be containing their fill, redepositing it on site, there's a lot of PFAS and some hydrocarbon contamination in that area. There is a chance that by putting a facility there, it's going to squeeze water out and move it off site. They're talking about a carbon filtration system, and we are probably going to ask that they continue to do some monitoring downstream of the discharge just to make sure that that filtration system is being effective. As far as wetlands mitigation goes, they are going to be using wetlands credits. So they're proposing to use wetland credits for Clat Bog and for from the Great Land Trust to meet their wetland mitigation. The Corps seems to approve that. We really want them to reconsider perhaps using those credits and purchasing some wetlands or putting some wetlands off limit for development in Turnagain Bog as the most appropriate for on-site wetland values and functions. We did have a bit of a discussion with that Craig Campbell, who had some suggestions in dealing with the Corps on that. So that will be a request. We're going to request that any truck traffic and equipment traffic associated with project construction and operations be required to avoid West Northern Lights Boulevard and use International Airport Road. And then finally, we think they need to do a better job of acknowledging the contribution of this project to the cumulative impacts on the issues I've talked about above. So we essentially are proposing to craft a letter which includes these points. And I think the intent, Kathy, is to see if we can get approval for that or there's any objection.
Yes, thank you, John. That's exactly, and thanks for giving a lot more detail on what was discussed at that open house or that community meeting. So I see a thumbs up from Jonathan Galen. Jonathan, would you like to move what John just kind of reiterated to get a vote on this?
I move that we approve that, or whatever the terminology would be, Kathy. So moved.
Well, the Turnagain Community Council will be, approve of submitting comments captured by myself and by John that reiterates a lot of what we have, as well as enhancing it based on what we found out at this community meeting. So that's kind of a long-winded one. Anybody want to try and reword that more succinctly?
That's fine. Thank
No,
you.
but I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Is there any discussion or any questions about the motion? Like I said, for Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage, those comments are due on the 15th. And because the FedEx expansion community workshop isn't until the 17th, we won't know if there's maybe something else we would add on to the comments we would submit on October 31st. So we could handle that two ways. We could go ahead and clump that in with this motion, or just have a separate motion that, it's the land use committee and the board would submit comments and they would be ratified at our November 2nd meeting with regard to the FedEx.
Yeah, I would suggest we don't lump it in because we don't know enough about that EA yet. So I would suggest that we have a motion, we go ahead with a motion to approve this, and then maybe having something separate on FedEx.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so Jonathan's motion with Pat seconded. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, can you please raise your hand? And if you support that. So I've got 3, 4, 5. Where's my husband, Dan? Why aren't you voting on this? What happened to Dan?
He's there.
Are you there, Dan? I don't know. Hang on, I'm gonna mute myself. I think he may be briefly indisposed, but I know he would be voting yes on this. How do you want to handle that? I'm sure there would be a hand there if he was able to vote. But without Dan, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dan, are you voting yes on the motion?
7, actually.
Yes, he is. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dan is 7, 8. Jonathan. Anybody else voting? So I've got yes. Does anybody
Kathy-
oppose? What? What?
Oh, Kathy, I probably have to abstain from this one. So I don't know if you
Okay.
want to put that down.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, everybody lower your hands if you voted yes, and then I'll ask if anybody is opposed. And Harrison, I think yeah, thank you. Anybody opposed, raise your hand. Okay, so that motion passes. 7 yes, no, 1, 0, and 1 abstention. Okay, so we will follow up with that, and we'll also be following up with the FedEx on the 17th and comments due the 31st. Okay, moving on. A little bit behind schedule, but our next item on our agenda is Brad Coy, and I see he has joined us. So thank you, Brad, from the Municipal Traffic Department to give us some information with regard to West Northern Lights and airport generated heavy truck traffic that has been an issue of contention for our council ever since weight limit signs were removed about 4 years ago. So, and Jackie Armstrong, and I don't see that she is participating this evening, which is unfortunate, but she has been instrumental in dogging this issue on behalf of the council, and we really appreciate it. So Brad, thank you for joining us this evening, and you have the floor.
Yeah, so mic check, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was having trouble earlier, so I'd come in and out a few times if you saw. But glad it's working. Glad to be able to join you tonight. So as Kathy said, I'm Brad Coy, the Municipal Traffic Engineer. I've been at the city about 2 years now, and I love getting to serve Anchorage. I'm a traffic engineer and also full-time bike commuter, so I try to bike all around all the different parts of town. I've hit about 25% of every street and trail in Anchorage, which is about 600 miles. So that's one of the things that I love to do. I have biked down this portion of Northern Lights. It is not very comfortable. I much prefer using the pathway on the side of the street. And my computer is telling me I need to plug in. So give me just 1 minute to actually hook my plug in. I had to change locations because the kids are doing their kitchen jobs, which is a good thing. Okay, there we go. I'm plugged in now. So yeah, so as I have spent some time in that area and got the request from Jackie, I asked my staff to go and get some data so we could see what's going on. So I've brought some of that data tonight to show you. Hopefully I can give an overview without too much jargon or too much confusion. So let me share my screen and I'll show you some information. Let's see. Okay, entire screen, share. Let's see, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we collected was the amount of vehicular traffic and heavy traffic that is on West Northern Lights Boulevard. Let me actually pull up, let's see if it'll let me find my, okay, it looks like when I was trying things, it took down my map of where we're at. So let me just open that real quick so you can see where we were at. So let's see if it'll take me there. Yep. So we did some counts right here in the center where where Westwood Drive hits Northern Lights Boulevard. So kind of in this area, which is as you're still going through the residential area of Northern Lights, just before you get to the western section where it goes into more closer to the airport. So right in that area is where we did this data collection. And what we found is that there were about 7,000 vehicles over the course of the 24-hour period. This graph here shows what the trends are like. So it definitely peaks right at about the 3, 4, 5 p.m. time frame. So right before the typical evening commuter peak, which probably corresponds a little bit with just airport traffic, I'm sure, as well as commuter traffic and school traffic. The heavy vehicles are fairly low. They're the red. And I put a percentage on, which is this green line, which shows that heavy vehicles bounce around between 0.5% and typically 1.5%, but they are, because of the low volumes in the middle of the night, they are at about 2%. Typically for most arterials around Anchorage, 2% is a very common amount of heavy vehicle traffic that you would get. So this graph is showing that it is not significantly a significant heavy vehicle amount, but it does pick up at night compared to the other traffic. The other thing that we saw, so this is the classification. It shows how things break out by time of day and type of vehicle. So you have motorcycles and cars, and 2-axle long is like a pickup truck. 2-axle 6 tires is dually or some of your delivery trucks. And so you do have quite a few of those. And then 3-axle and above are typically what we do as heavy vehicle. Let's see. So looking at I did the graph of that one. Let's look at the speeds. So here's the speed study that we did. This is, the speed limit is 35. This shows how things vary throughout the day. There were, typically you look at how much is going on in the high end, and you look at this statistic, which is the 85th percentile speed, which means 85% of the traffic is traveling at that speed or below it. And typically you want that within 5 miles an hour of your posted speed. So 44 is actually 9 miles an hour over the posted speed. So looking at that data, it looks like it's 44 for the eastbound direction, 43 for the westbound. So pretty similar both directions, but this is a concerning number given the posted speed of 35. So definitely higher speeds than what the speed limit would suggest it should be traveling. And then let's see, this was just the volume. So these other two really capture kind of that same amount of data. So let me come back and actually get to stop sharing my screen and kind of get to look at you while I'm talking a little bit more. So that's what the data is showing. I am curious if if from your experience being there 24/7 and living along that corridor, is there anything there that's surprising to you, or that you can fill me in on a little bit from what your experience is?
I think that's pretty accurate, sir. What I thought was interesting, I briefly saw around 3 o'clock, not knowing military time, but calculating 3 or 4 o'clock, it looks like the highest percentage of heavy vehicles is at that time, somewhere around then, the heaviest time, heading back to warehouses and so forth from, suggesting those people start earlier in the morning than some of us, 6 o'clock, starting the shift, 7, whatever it is. But the highest peak looked to be for these heavy vehicles around that time, which is kind of what I've experienced.
Okay.
Late afternoon. Thank you. That's very good data.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of the delivery drivers are going to be starting earlier and ending earlier to avoid some of those commuter peaks.
One last question. Do we know whatever happened to these signs? Because I quite recall them living one block off on West Northern Lights for about 38 years now. And those signs were there on the weight maximums.
Let's see. The signs were identified as non-legal, ones that we were not legally able to enforce. And so either I don't know if it was because of state statute. That's one thing that I am not as clear on. It did happen before I was there, but the explanation that I was given is that there was something that was non-legal about them.
Well, that's a mystery because I don't think the average citizen put them on those signposts. So that's a real mystery. And
Yeah. Yep.
Well, if I could interject, who made that? Who provided that information to you that they likely were removed because they weren't unenforceable and they weren't legal?
The person previously in my position, as I reached out, so they would have been the municipal traffic engineer at the time.
Okay, well, we had numerous discussions with Stephanie Mormillo, and she couldn't provide any information as far as who put them up and who took them down. And that's what we were trying to find out when she was there, and we worked with her for quite a while, because there was, I mean, we're talking decades that they were up, decades. And as soon as they were taken down, and we were told the Muni didn't take them down, and the state said, the airport said, we didn't do it. The state said, we didn't do it. We're just baffled, because it was like a light switch going on to, I mean, from that moment that they disappeared, neighbors were seeing a significant increase in airport destination or airport generated heavier truck traffic, like you were describing in that data. And of course, they travel during all sorts of hours, 3, 4 in the morning. And with the vibrations, the emissions going right past an elementary school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These were critical in putting a damper on a huge impact, and that now exists because those signs were removed. And so, those signs are like on Hillcrest Drive, and I don't know who's enforcing those, but it seems like they're not enforceable is kind of an odd thing to say. But we've got other hands. Okay, so I'm going to start with Kathleen Belowski. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Hi, thanks, Kathy. Brad, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for presenting the data, and thank you to your MOA traffic group for doing the traffic study. I have a question. You said something that the rate of 2% is considered common with many areas in Anchorage. Is that correct? Of heavy
Arterials.
traffic?
Yeah, like
Okay,
arterials.
is that 2% of industrial areas as opposed to residential areas? Because in this case, we have an industrial area driving through a residential area. And so it does have a dramatic impact in a school zone and in the part of Northern Lights that is residential. So
Yeah,
can you
that's
speak to that?
yeah, that's a fair question. There are not as many arterial roads that are um, through a primarily residential area. So that is one of the unique characteristics of this part of Northern Lights, where, like you said, there's the industrial area on the other side, but um, as you think about kind of other portions of Northern Lights where you're traveling through commercial and you've got deliveries and a lot of things that are happening along that street, what you do see in this location is a lot of that through traffic.
I understand that, but that is the problem, that it's through traffic and it's industrial traffic. And I would encourage you to consider the impact on private citizens that this is having and has had for years since the signs came down and the industrial traffic from the airport has increased. They do have an alternative route, which is International Airport Road, that they could travel through. It might just be the cost of doing business, but we're a residential neighborhood. We've been there long before the airport had its boom, or this particular boom, or booms before it. And so I would encourage our council to continue to pursue some kind of limit, weight limit, speed limit, or just get them off the road entirely. Don't know if that's possible, but that's my opinion. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it.
Okay, Pat, you have your hand up.
I wanted to comment on the signs. You know, we've been here in this area, in this location 50 years, and the signs were there before the road was, I think they were there for weight. And sometimes they would come up in the spring, they would put weight restrictions on the road. And then maybe they came down when they upgraded the road, but the portion of the road beyond your street, Kathy, but that hasn't been upgraded. And so it really is still like the old road. And I don't know, but we should have those weight restriction signs there, and that would reduce the heavy truck traffic.
Speaking a little bit to the springtime, the city does put weight restriction signs all over the city with regards to as the thaw is occurring to reduce damage to the roads, especially on the hillside. So some of those roads do get those as a temporary for a few weeks, and I can look into whether that's what these signs had started out as.
No,
But
I have to say
there was
that
no
they
truck
didn't.
traffic.
No, they didn't. I think that I mean, you'd have to look clear back when Jim, oh gosh, is it Jim Cubits was
Yes.
our state legislator who helped get us those, and even maybe beyond that. And I've never seen any kind of seasonal weight limit, truck limit signs on Northern Lights.
No, they haven't in years, that they've been gone for a year. And then the truck signs are gone. I don't know when they went away. I just know that they
it's going
used to
about
be
3 to 4 years now, and it's
Right.
longer than I ever imagined that it would go that this hasn't been resolved. But let's see, Marnie, you've got your hand up.
I'd really appreciate your time to try to nail some of these facts down. We live on Forest Park Drive, and maybe some of the problem here might be jurisdiction, because is that portion of Northern Lights state or municipal? Because we have no heavy vehicle signs that Mayor Mystrom put up on Hillcrest and Forest Park, which are still there. I check them all the time because of the problem on Northern Lights, but that's, you know, nothing, no commercial vehicle with a gross weight of 10,000 pounds. But he could do that because Forest Park is a neighborhood road, not a state road. Do you know what your jurisdiction is over there on Northern
Yeah,
Lights?
let me share my screen and show you.
I believe it's part state, part city.
Okay, so here is a map that shows what is state, what is city. So the green is state. So the section of Northern Lights that where it comes together right before it hits the railroad. That and to the east is state, and then everything to the west of the railroad is all municipal. The green is the airport, which is also under state jurisdiction. So this section is all municipal.
That the city, that you all would have jurisdiction over this.
Right.
You felt you could put signs up. Okay.
So one thing I want to add, even though it is an arterial, and as Kathleen has indicated, it's unusual for an arterial because it goes through residential area and you have a school zone. And given that probably the safety impacts probably around the school zone, but probably the most impact is at night when noise levels are lower and you have trucks going through, they're heard more, there's more vibration. Does the city have any leeway with an arterial to put some weight limits or restrictions on it, given the unusual circumstances?
Yeah, so that is something that I should get more up to speed on. My understanding is that there are limits in what we can do. I'm still in this exploration phase, trying to figure out and understand all the issues to know what questions I should ask. So I will note that one down, and that will be one of the questions that I ask, what our ability to do that is.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, Brad, Harrison, I'll let you go ahead and ask her. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just a couple other things to note about this particular situation that may or may not have a bearing on things, but I think it's kind of unique just in terms of it being like one of two main routes to that area north of the airport where there's a lot of shippers and whatnot. So I mean, yeah, all arterials have quite a bit of truck traffic. It's just in this area, it's quite concentrated, being kind of a bottleneck for that. The other thing, I mean, just thinking, I think ideally we would like to see a lot of that traffic be on International Airport because that's just the design of that road is to be much more of an arterial, like even more so than this one, for heavy traffic like that. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, that can be taken into consideration. Just the fact that, yeah, we can always expect to have some level of traffic on major roads like Northern Lights, but we do have a viable alternative here. If we could really push traffic in that direction.
I plan to go and talk with the Freight Advisory Committee at AMATS. The MPO has a quarterly Freight Advisory Committee meeting, and to find out a little bit more from the freight industry, what their understanding of the use of the roads and what they're seeing. The other thing that does come to mind too is you might have seen in the news that Amazon is planning to do a distribution center more in the Midtown area on Old Seward and Dowling, if I remember correctly. And so I do wonder how much of some of the deliveries will shift towards going there first, which would then not send them through the neighborhood. So I'm kind of wondering how that might play into some of this. But yeah, thanks for sharing your perspective, Harrison.
Yeah, Brett, I've been before the AMAT's Freight Advisory Committee when they have updated their freight, whatever it's called, the document that dictates freight. I'm spacing out on the title of it. I've been part of that process and have testified before them. It's been a few years since that plan was updated. So they're aware of it, although commissioners come and go. And so I appreciate that you would go before them again. I would ask that the community council also be part of that effort when you go to talk to them, so they can hear from us specifically at the same time they hear from you, because we've been living and breathing this for quite a while when it was good, when the signs were up, and now the huge difference since the signs have been taken down. And so and the good news is Craig Campbell, who is the interim manager of the airport, he is fully 100%, and I'm quoting 100%, concurs that no airport generated heavy truck traffic should be going down West Northern Lights through Turnagain. So you're not going to get any pushback at all from the airport. We have that on record, him saying that directly to us on more than one occasion. And also, West Northern Lights from Wisconsin to Nathaniel Court was upgraded in the, oh boy, now I'm maybe 2000s or mid 2005, something like that. I've got all the documents that are like this thick. And the design, even though it's identified as a minor arterial, it was built to neighborhood collector standards. It was never, and this is when the weight signs were up, and of course we all agreed with that it was never ever intended or built or designed the way it is right now to have that kind of traffic that go through this section of Northern Lights through Turnagain. And as Craig Campbell said, until that road is upgraded and designed to minor arterial standards, that should never be considered to be used as a minor arterial. I think he said it very, very well. And so when Jonathan Galen asked about there's got to be some kind of considerations, apparently there were back when North Air Park started being developed, that those weight limit signs went up. And, as has been subsequently said, that traffic has only increased. And it may not seem like a large percent, but if you're living along West Northern Lights, like Jackie Armstrong and other neighbors, they're affected by the vibrations, the noise, the emissions. It really creates, there's been video. We put together a West Northern Lights committee, and people shot video of vehicles passing other, speeding, going right through the school zone, 20 mile an hour, active speeding right through that area. It's just unsafe. And there's got to be something that we can do and not just say those signs are illegal.
So Kathy, that begs another quick question from Mr. Coy regarding if signs can't go up, if go up again, whatever the case may be, what is involved? You might have to check back, but what is involved in these electronic signs that flash, your speed, like we see, especially, at Potter Marsh and around town? Some of those are temporary little rigs, but that has an effect, I think, because it has an effect on me. What's involved in the process for getting some of those, or I guess we'd have to talk to the police department to post an officer more often, but other things besides speed humps or, traffic calming for speed limits, as it were.
Yeah, so because speed is clearly an issue from the data showing that traffic volumes or traffic speeds are going well over the speed limit, the speed feedback signs, what they're called, are a potential solution to be able to post, in my mind, right as you're entering the more residential area. That gives you that reminder, tells you, hey, you're going
From both
too
directions.
fast. Right, both directions as you're entering, yeah, from the airport, and then also probably about the railroad-ish.
And a permanent one, not one of the ones on wheels, right?
Right, correct.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Much appreciate your time.
I know that we have temporary ones that we can test out and use and see how effective they are before investing in a permanent that requires running electricity and having a longer process to get it installed. So I'll plan to look into that and see.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions for Brad? Okay, well, Brad, really appreciate you working with Jackie on this. Besides going to the Freight Advisory Commission, what else are you planning to do or would be willing to do to continue working with us on this? Because the data alone says a lot, but doesn't really convey the real life situation of these trucks going down Northern Lights.
So the things that I have written down are to look more into the legal question. What is legally within our ability and my ability in our department with regards to the truck restrictions or weight restrictions. Also look into the question that you mentioned about the road design and whether it was designed to collector standards versus arterial standards. And then also checking into the speed feedback signs and options for that as a solution. The next AMATS Freight Advisory Committee is in November, and I'll coordinate with AMATS director and let you know what I find out about that agenda if they have space for us. I know with the MTP going on, there might be other topics that already have fully tapped them out, but I'll look into that to see.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Dan, you've got your hands raised.
Got one question. If we got our assembly sign orders, put rate restrictions on this road, would that be, could we get it through code to get weight restrictions on this road?
Dan, you broke up the first whole half of your question. I'm sorry, but can you try it again?
Yeah, my question is, can we ask our assembly people to write an ordinance and get it approved through the assembly to put weight restrictions on this road?
I can look when I look at the legal question to see what avenues, if that's an avenue that would allow it to be legal, if it's not legal, or what implications there are with regards to that. So that'll be one of the things I look into when I look into the legal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. And thank you, Brad, again for attending and the work that you did over the summer to provide some data. It gives us one picture, but it's not the whole picture. And so I have the documents showing West Northern Lights and all that, if you want to tap into that. Probably the Muni records have all that too. And so if anybody else wants to say anything, if not, we'll let Brad go for the evening. And again, thank you. And we look forward to your follow-up on everything that you plan to do. So we really
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
My pleasure. I was part of a community council before I came to the city or to the Muni. So I definitely value the effort that you put into community council. So thank you so much.
Okay, we look forward to seeing you again. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the 2050 AMATS Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We're way behind on our agenda, so we'll try and kind of kind of move quickly on some of this stuff. So, let's see here. I'm behind on my paperwork and how I need to deal with this. So AMATS does their Metropolitan Transportation Plan update every 5 or so years, and it's currently out for review and comment. The Assembly was going to have a public hearing on it, about a week and a half ago, but they decided to postpone it because they really hadn't done their due diligence on hearing from the public about what issues the neighborhood may have. So I went through it, and husband Dan and I went to their open house, and I identified 7 listed projects within that plan that either are within Turnagain Community Council boundaries or it's generic kind of blanket where things could affect areas within our council if put into place. And one of the things that is in there that's on our CIP list is upgrading Wisconsin. However, the upgrades that this plan described weren't any of the plans that we identified when we asked for upgrading Wisconsin. So that's kind of an issue. And also they didn't really provide a lot of detail about the ideas that they have, like, intersections and how they might redo them, or, bike paths or anything like that. There was no detailed information. And so we don't know how they would actually, on site affect in both positive and or negative ways these neighborhood streets that were included. But the one glaring thing project that was not included was upgrading Turnagain Street. And everybody familiar with that certainly knows the condition of Turnagain Street. Design had been done for it. The right-of-ways are very narrow, but when Turnagain Boulevard was upgraded, a design for Turnagain Street was also done. And the only things that they could really do at that point that they identified was provide a sidewalk on the west side that would extend south of the one in front of Rustic Goat, put lighting up, and put curb and gutter and drainage. They couldn't do anything to help circulation or identify, speed or anything like that. Fast forward that we've had that pretty high ranked on our CIP list for quite some time, and it's never appeared on the AMATS list. And so, I was going to testify in front of the Assembly that say it's a glaring omission. Why isn't Turnagain Street on there? Well, Anna Brawley, one of our Assembly representatives, she had a very interesting email exchange in late September with the head of AMATS, and his name is Aaron, and I just don't even want to try and pronounce his last name because I know I will get it wrong, and I apologize. But she asked why Turnagain Street isn't on this since it's been a high priority. And basically, he said that it'll never get there. The right-of-ways are so narrow that they would have to do full takes to do anything with regard to that road. And it would be very cost prohibitive. It would be about $25 million just between Northern Lights and 35th and McRae, where it intersects 35th and McRae. And so his recommendation was to have the council consider getting a study to look at the issues and develop solutions that are not restricted by AMATS and everything that goes on, like a recognizance study that could find other improvements which are less impactful to the right of way and maybe less expensive. But everybody, if you do a reality check, there's not much you can do at all on that street unless you did huge property takes. So that was kind of an eye-opener. It's why we've continued to ask for it. Every time this plan comes up, it's high on our CIP list. We were basically given the reality check that'll never happen. And so I wanted to, be sure and let you know what went on between her conversation and the AMATS coordinator for the city, so that our, you know, our expectations now cannot be, gee, that street just needs upgraded. And when JJ Brooks develops his development, that'll be nice. And JJ Brooks told me earlier this summer, Kathy, it's gotta be our #1 CIP. It's gotta be done. It's not gonna happen. And so don't really know what to do with that information, but I think we all need to be aware of the reality of that street and the limitations that it has on any kind of improvement. So it was quite stark to hear that. So anyway, comments are due on this plan now. Well, I think the assembly is going to have this on their Tuesday agenda. They're having a work session on it tomorrow. And so essentially we've already identified what's, you know, high priority for us with regard to projects in our neighborhood through our CIP process that we go through every year. So if the body allows, I could just go ahead and convey that, and also convey that we would need a lot more information and detail on some of the things that they've identified and included in this draft plan that we don't know if we would support or not, because there's not a good level of detail of the project scope. And I think by conveying that, that's pretty well what we can do as a body at this point in time. So anybody have any feedback on what I just said?
Kathy, I would just say you go ahead and convey that. I know we're running quite a bit behind right now on the schedule, so I'd say just go ahead and convey that. I don't know that we need a motion.
Okay, does anybody disagree with that? Okay, then I will continue to follow this and let people know what's going on. Okay, and then very quickly, I heard from somebody that if for those of you who have lived here for a little while, there used to be oh, Dan, you have your hand raised.
Yes, move to extend to 9:15.
Okay, can I get a second on that?
Second.
Is there any opposition to extending our meeting till 9:15? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Dan. So I was contacted by Mary Beth Prince. I don't know if any of you know her. She has had contacted me with regard to Trail Watch. There used to be a program called Trail Watch that was initiated in, oh, I think 2003 or 4, something like that. And you just volunteers could sign up. There was a coordinator through the Muni. And if you signed up, you just all volunteer and you could get bands like this. Am I holding them right side, the right side? Yeah. Bands like this that, that Dan and I signed up for it, where you would just walk and just keep an eye on the trail, pick up trash, you know, report anything that the city might want to do as far as, it was initiated in 2003. But as time went on, it kind of faded and there isn't any kind of organized director or anything with the Muni anymore. And she was wondering, she still wears her bands and does what the intent was to do. Dan and I have not. And she just wanted to know if we'd be interested in an effort to try and initiate this program. So we don't really have time to, you know, kind of follow through with that tonight, but you guys might be thinking about it. And if anybody has any suggestions, let me know. And, you know, maybe we can take this up again next month or something when we'll have more of a chance to discuss it. But that's kind of an FYI for now, that if you guys think it's a good idea, maybe we can convince the city to fund a position within parks to help coordinate that again. Okay, let's see. Now we are at land use committee report. So I'll take the first one and then I'll let John take the rest. So as you remember, last month, we entertained a motion to consider our comments on the McCleary lease application for railroad property that fell into the same footprint of one of the alternatives for the Fish Creek Trail extension. And we voted 8-7 to oppose that lease application. I did talk with the vice president of real estate yesterday to get an update on what's happening with that. The railroad board met the day after comments were due, so they postponed any action until their meeting on the, what did I say in my email? Because I know I had sent it on email. They are postponing it until, sorry, I don't know why I'm not. Oh, there it is. I apologize. Postpone it until November 14th. And that meeting is in Anchorage. Their last one was in Fairbanks. You can also zoom in on it. And just FYI, they received over 300 comments. 9 were in favor of the lease and or opposed the trail extension project. The remainder of the comments they received opposed the lease and or supported the trail project. So clearly an overwhelming amount of input in support of the trail and imposing the lease application. So I just wanted to give you that update since we've been following this, and we did submit comments on that based on our vote last month. And so we'll find out what the Alaska board does in November. They still were working on getting an appraisal for the property as well. And that was just an FYI. So that's the update on that project. And then John, co-chair of the land use committee with me, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay, Marnie had her hand up real quick, so
Oh,
I'll just
sorry,
let her say
Marnie.
that, and then we'll move on.
That's okay, Kathy. Just a housekeeping item. Do we have a written version of that resolution opposing the lease? I've had some folks over here ask me for a copy of the resolution of the TCC.
Yeah, sorry, Marnie. We did not end up doing a formal resolution. We just had it on the agenda to discuss to see what we wanted to do with that item. And there was a motion to oppose it. And then we had a lot of discussion and then we took a vote. So there isn't a resolution per se. It's just a motion that we voted on.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, so I will give a real quick run through with the rest. With the Fish Creek Trail Connection project, they seem to have continued to have been delayed. We tried to get them to make a presentation before the council on where they were this meeting, but they're not available. We'll try for November. They put together a minor update of their website, which still I think is looking at having some of their work done by the end of the year in terms of a final design report and maybe their categorical exclusion. It's not clear which alternative from the website they've actually picked as a preferred alternative. So I guess we're going to wait to hear what happens with that, and hopefully they'll come before us. The next thing to report on is the master plan update with the airport. They had their second advisory committee meeting in their public open house last month, and it was pretty much focused on what were the aviation forecasts. And the aviation forecast really kind of looked at 4 areas. What were their total airplane operations and landings, their passenger employments, their cargo forecast in tons, and general aviation operations. And their forecasts were generally very modest. I think, even their high scenario might be close to somewhere around 3%, more likely 1 to 2%. So I guess one of the implications of this is they're not looking for a lot of major improvements for airport facilities. A new north-south runway is not on the mix right now, and they're really kind of looking at more infilling development. There is a presentation that's available on the airport website. If people can't find it, let me know, and I'll try to send them a link. But it is very interesting to look at just to see what they forecast. I see that Melissa has her hand up, and it might have been due to Fish Creek, so maybe to go back to her for a minute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, John. I just wanted to say that if you look at the map on the Fish Creek project website, they have updated it to in a way that enhances their preferred alternative. And that alternative is the one that would go through the least, the potentially leased land.
Great, thanks for that clarification. I'm assuming it'll also involve the southern portion of the route that goes on the west side of the railroad tracks to Fish Creek.
Yes, I believe so.
Great. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
and
Thanks.
John, just quickly, because and I did ask them for their design study report, and I haven't gotten that yet. And I did ask them when I told them what our motion was, a result of our motion in September. And I asked them because it did, as Melissa said, it really did show a preferred alternative, but it's, you know, those lines are so thick on that map that you don't really know how they may or may not conform to the conditions that we put in our resolution that we passed last year with regard to support of the trail. So, so those are kind of important distinctions, but yeah, stay tuned. So sorry, John, go ahead.
Nope, thanks. No, thanks for the clarifications from both of you. That's definitely helpful. I guess back to the master plan update. One other thing we're going to be doing is getting them some additional comments on their goals and objectives for the master plan. But I would say if you can get your hand on that presentation of their forecast, it really is pretty interesting. And then it leads into their identification of what they see as their major improvements. But I would say they're very modest compared to the last master plan update. The last thing to talk about are the R2 zoning modifications and the upcoming actions. There's sort of a related one, which I said in a meeting this morning regarding some proposed ordinance changes for R3 and multifamily housing. As was implied, I think, by Carolyn early on, a presentation was given on the new ordinance that's being sponsored by Anna Brawley, Meg Zolotel, and Daniel Voland. They are going to slow things down. It is going to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission with probably action next June. But it is something that we want to keep an eye on. Right now, I think they're talking about reducing the number of zoning districts from like about 13 to 5 and consolidating a lot of the multifamily zoning districts. And we've indicated that if there are any task forces or working groups, we'd like to be represented on it so we can get some community input to that. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We'll see where it goes. There's a similar proposal to look at reducing some of the dimensional and lot requirements for multifamily units. Essentially, they've pointed out that there's about 8,000 lots that are zoned for like R3, R4, and very few of them are developed for R3, R4. There's been very few new construction of R3, R4, and the reason they give for that is in some ways because the lot size requirements, setbacks, offsite improvements are really fairly prohibitive, and it's actually cheaper for developers to build duplexes in the same lot than it is multifamily. And parking is potentially one of those things that would figure into that. So they have introduced an ordinance to revise the sort of the lot dimensional and other requirements for R3, R4. It's going to show up, I think, before the assembly in December. It probably goes through the Planning and Zoning Commission first, but that's something we'll want to keep an eye on because we have a lot of R3 in our district. The two things I think we definitely want to keep an eye on if they change the dimensional requirements is it could push more parking onto the streets. And someone did bring up the question about making sure they're looking at drainage issues for what it does to the surrounding lots. But I guess more to come on that, and I'll maybe try to make some presentations available to folks before the next meeting in terms of what's been presented for both the R2 residential one and the R3. So I guess any questions on land use?
Doesn't look like it. That means we're either doing a really good job or we just have them all confused.
That's
It
right.
could be either one.
Talk too fast.
Okay, it looks like we are still within our allotted extended time. So if anybody has any last minute things they want to say before we adjourn, share with anybody. If not, thank you very, very much for hanging in there on a long meeting, and we really appreciate it. And the board and John, who has, done a yeoman's job of being co-chair of the land use committee and taking a lot of this on, really thank him and appreciate everybody's work on some of this stuff. So if we don't have anything else to discuss, I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Marnie, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Dan, second. Is there any objections to adjourn? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks all.
Thank you.
Our next